Dziękuję. I think it's how you say thank you, right? Okay, that's the only word I know in Polish. So I trust he introduced me in the right way. I didn't understand anything. I'm Luca. I'm in charge of business development and strategy at MongoDB in EMEA. The title of this talk is pretty ambitious. So the future of data management. Actually, we are so ambitious because we think that relational databases are the most successful technology in the history. It's 44 years old, and it's still used. So let's start with a raise of hand. Who is using a relational database today? Who knows what MongoDB is? Well, a pretty good number, let's say 10%. So we have 90% of people that should be convinced by my talk that they need to use MongoDB. So let's get started. First of all, MongoDB lands in Poland. We are announcing the partnership with B2B, and we want to say thank you for the amazing support you're giving us. And the reason why we are in Poland is because for us, this is a very important market, and I'll show you why. So it's in the top 10 countries in Europe in terms of LinkedIn profiles with MongoDB in it. And let's set a goal. We want to climb to number 5 within a year. So we need your help to get in the top 5 and to put Poland in the map of the top 5 countries for MongoDB in Europe. The lead over Hadoop, for example, is 3.x. So there is a third of people who are using Hadoop if compared to MongoDB. We have 3,000 people who have registered to our free on-demand training, and 600 people have actually passed the exam. So probably there is even somebody here who is already certified on MongoDB. Why do we talk about these numbers? Because it's a new technology, and when you need to choose a new technology, you have to consider 3 factors. The skills, so the availability of skills, the adoption, and the ecosystem, and we have the 3 of them. So let me go to my main argument, which is the word has changed. And actually, I'll pick some points from the presentation from Sean, and I'll also say something around what Werner said in the beginning, because what we see is that for the first time in 40 years, relational databases have a legitimate challenger. And Sean said, we've been hearing, Sean from Enterprise Division said, we've been hearing for almost 40 years that relational databases are going to be replaced by something new. Well, we don't really think that. We think that the growth in new technologies is going to happen somewhere else. Relational databases are here to stay, but 80% of the use cases that can be built with a relational database can be moved or migrated or rebuilt around MongoDB. So in the 1970s, we used to manage data using a relational model. The paper that gave birth to the relational model is actually dated 1970. And in the 1970s, no, that's the wrong slide. Well, in theory, it should be animated, and you should see the... Well, yeah, we cover everything in one slide, but it should have been animated, trust me. So in the first place, you should have seen a guy with a mobile, which was invented in the 70s. So the first mobile phone was invented in the 70s. And what you can see in pink are actually punch cards. So this is how you interacted with computers in the 70s. Now we have mobile phones, as you can see directly. And we don't really know how the future will look like. So the question is, if I can move to the next slide, are we using old tools for new jobs? Relational databases are 40 years old, and since then, it happened a lot of innovation in the IT world. For example, back then, everything was a table. Everything was rows and columns. Now, 80% of the information that companies are generating are either semi-structured or not structured at all. So they don't fit in the database model. In the past, we had waterfall development and project management methodologies. So very, very long pages of requirements, and then cascading the requirements through various teams, and then starting to build the application. Now everything is agile, is iterative. In the past, we had data centers. Now everything is in the cloud. In the past, we had the PC. Now everything is done on the mobile. And even the role of the IT executives changed. So we were talking to a guy at the booth, and he said, I'm using MongoDB because I need to build an application very, very quickly. I'm not even sure if my company knows it. So what happens is developers find and choose new technologies. And then when the technology is in production, it becomes a technology standard. And that's why we have invested a lot of time in making MongoDB very easy to use for developers. So what we see is a new enterprise IT stack. And how do we see this happening? For three main trends. As I said before, development is now iterative, hardware is now cloud, but also we cannot afford to buy software as we were doing before. So we cannot afford to buy a perpetual license upfront and then pay 22% support fee every year. Even the business models of software companies have changed. So MongoDB provides answers by being a flexible database with a dynamic schema. It can work very, very well in the cloud because you can scale horizontally. As we said before, I joined from Oracle, and it's pretty challenging to scale a relational database in the cloud, if not impossible, because you either need shared disks, you need particular architecture to scale a relational database. MongoDB has been built for the cloud, and it's open source. This is an open source conference, and we decided to use open source because it's the best way for us to build and distribute software. So if you have to remember one thing after this call, after this talk, you should probably remember this slide. You will kind of remember the slide where you've seen everything in the same place, the non-animated slide, but this is actually the most important one. So at the top you see applications, at the bottom there is infrastructure, and that's fine. On the right, security, and on the left, management and administration. What we really care for is for the data management layer. So we generate a lot of data in companies nowadays, and we see the world divided in two. On one side, online data, data where response time should be in the order of milliseconds. It could be your e-commerce website, it could be managing your financial transactions, or whatever. On the other side, we see what we call offline data, where you can tolerate a latency of a second or more. For online data, we will still have relational databases. They've done a good job, and we will probably not replace relational databases with ERPs. SAP will not probably move to MongoDB in the short term. It will use relational database for a while. What we see is that relational databases are not growing that much. New applications are not really built on relational databases. They are built on MongoDB for the online part. On the offline side, we see Hadoop emerging as the platform to manage big data in the enterprise. And the enterprise data warehousing technologies like Exadata, Netezza, and all the key players won't go away. It's just that new problems need new solutions to be solved. So why MongoDB? It's a general purpose database, so you can probably write 80% of your applications on MongoDB instead of a relational database. It's a document database, and by document, we don't really mean PDF or zip or PowerPoint file. We mean what we call the JSON document. If there are developers in the room, they know that JSON is a JavaScript object notation, and it's the emerging standard for developers. So we took the language used by the database very, very near to what developers are using. So it's very easy for developers to build new application, and they can reduce the time to build applications with MongoDB, and it's open source. It's the leading NoSQL database. We've mentioned before dbengines.com. It's a ranking of all the databases. MongoDB is the only NoSQL database in the top 5. is actually at the 5th place, very, very close to Postgres. Actually, we thought we were going to the 4th place last month, but we are still very, very close to Postgres. So let's say we will be in the top 4 by the end of probably of this month or next month. It's very popular, and that's very important because you need to find skills if you want to build application. You need to find partners who can help you to build the applications, and we have a huge lead over the other competitors. So it's not just adoption, it's also enterprise customers. So the 27 out of the top 100 global companies are already using MongoDB. So you're in good company. This is just an example. We have customers like eBay, EE, MetLife, SAP, Ericsson, and a lot of large, really, really large implementations around MongoDB. The largest cluster with MongoDB, it's in the order of thousands of servers. And the use cases are many. It's a general purpose database. So what are the use cases for Oracle? A lot. What are the use cases for MongoDB? Really a lot. So you can build different type of applications. So some of them are more analytical in nature, some of them are more transactional in nature, but you can dig a bit more into the details by looking at our white papers. I share with you the link at the end. So I'll give you an example. Werner referred to agility in the beginning, and he said the pace of innovation, I don't remember exactly the numbers, but it was around how many days or months or years it took to companies or products to reach 50 million, right? And the time needed to get to scale went down a lot. So a software startup in the technology world is successful or not within weeks. MetLife is an insurance company. They were able to build a solution with MongoDB in 3 months. They tried with a relational database for 2 years and they failed. That's the pace of innovation, the rate of agility that we enable with MongoDB. So to summarize, we enable new applications that are better suited for the needs of your customers. We can bring these applications together faster to market and reduce the TCO. And I'll give you an example using one database company with a red logo that I cannot mention. And if you compare the cost of MongoDB to the cost of this database in terms of licenses and in terms of people that you need to manage the database itself, you save around 70%. MongoDB is not just a product, it's also a company. So we've built a business around the technology and we sell what we call the enterprise subscription. So there is a subscription including professional support, including consulting, training, and a lot of tools, of additional tools that are used by the enterprise. So that's almost it. I just want to encourage you to go to education.mongodb.com where you can take a free training on MongoDB and get the certification on the product. We have 3,000 people who have done this already in Poland. If everybody in this room, plus the guys connected in streaming, do the same, we will double that number. So I encourage you to go there and to go also on mongodb.com/whitepapers, where you can find much more content. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luca.